Ortiz, and I'm the Associate Executive Director of COPAL, a member-based organization representing thousands of members across the state of Minnesota. We gather today under difficult circumstances that demand our attention and, most importantly, our action. We're gathered on sacred ground. We stand at the memorial of Alex Preddy with the memorial of Renee Good nearby. These memorials remind us that the consequences of unchecked government power cannot be measured in headlines alone. They're measured in empty chairs at the dinner table, in children growing up without a parent, and in communities forever changed by loss of a loved one. Today, we recognize the recent killings that occurred during ICE enforcement operations in Maine and Texas. The victims were Juan Sebastian Duran Guerrero and Lorenzo Salgado Arajo. Two more families are mourning the loss of a loved one who will never come home. We grieve alongside them, and we refuse to accept that this is becoming something our communities are expected to endure. As an immigrant myself, and as someone who witnessed the pain that so many of our members of our community have endured, this is very personal. I am grieving alongside them, and I am afraid. I am afraid that if nothing changes, another family will receive the phone call that changes their life forever. I am afraid that another community member will gather around another memorial that shouldn't have existed. Just a month ago, we traveled to Boston to accept the John F. Kennedy Profiling Courage Award, not for ourselves, but on behalf of the people of the Twin Cities. That award belonged and belongs to the thousands of Minnesotans who choose courage over fear during Operation Metro Surge. And with that honor also comes a lot of responsibility. COPAL is a member-based organization, and over the last several weeks, our members have been clear. They expect us to demand transparency, accountability, and government oversight. That is why we're all here today. Today, we are delivering a letter to the members of Minnesota's congressional delegation, calling on them to use the full authority of Congress to demand accountability from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and its agencies, including Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. Government power must always be exercised within the boundaries of the Constitution. No law enforcement agency should operate without transparency, accountability, and the respect of human life. Constitutional rights are not partisan rights. They are American rights. We cannot become numb to the loss of life or the violations of constitutional rights. We cannot allow repeated injustice to convince us that this is simply the way things are. Today, we are asking our elected leaders to do what Minnesotans did during Operation Metro Surge, to choose courage over fear, place the Constitution above politics, and protect the dignity of every person. And together, we have the responsibility to make sure that injustice never becomes normal. It is now my honor to introduce Zena Stenvik, Superintendent of Columbia Heights Public Schools, and a fellow recipient of the people of the Twin Cities, who accepted the John F. Kennedy Profiling Courage Award on behalf of our communities. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Zena Stenvik. I serve as the superintendent for Columbia Heights Public Schools, which is not far from this site. Columbia Heights is a designated city of peace and was recognized as an All-America City in 2016 by the National Civic League. But our community was anything but peaceful during Operation Metro Surge. On January 6th, our first student was detained with her mother on their way to elementary school. By that afternoon, they had been whisked to a detention center in Texas. This was the first of 7 of our students who would be detained, including a small 5-year-old boy wearing a blue bunny hat similar to this and a Spider-Man backpack, Liam Conejo Ramos. I'm here today with my colleagues and fellow Minnesotans to urge members of Congress to follow the oath they took to uphold the principles and human rights outlined in the Constitution of this great nation. Just as we were selected to represent the courageous people of the Twin Cities who stood up for their neighbors to defend fundamental values of dignity, due process, and equal protection under the law during a time when many believed those values were under threat. So too, the members of Congress were hired by the people to represent the people. We've heard from the people of Minnesota. And it is clear that your constituents are fed up with civil matters of immigration being treated as criminal offenses, resulting in the deaths in our street. School children and their families, good, hardworking community members, are being harmed by such operations. Many of the families I worked with this year entered the country lawfully seeking asylum. They were permitted to be here by the United States government. It is clear to me that these operations are not targeted towards violent criminals. I wanted to speak out today because school leaders from across the nation have reached out to me asking how they could prepare for a similar invasion of their school community. It became a daily occurrence that ICE vehicles were driving around our schools, on our school property, present during arrival and dismissal times. I had to pull kids in from recess because of the heavy ICE presence. And it's my job to keep children safe. And there was a very real fear of stray bullets or the very real scenarios that we saw again and again of armed, masked agents pushing, for example, a student's aunt down onto the ground while they were waiting for the bus. Imagine that. My job is to educate children, to keep them safe, to support families within our community. And I urge you to think about what you want for your own children and grandchildren. Isn't it a sense of safety and security that we want for our children, not for them to be riddled with fear day in and day out? If these atrocities could have happened to us here, they can happen anywhere. In fact, these communities across America are still experiencing it. I was so angry to see the recent killings of Lorenzo Salgado Araujo and Joan Sebastian Duran Guerrero. Their children just lost their dad. Their families have been ripped apart. For what? What more do you need to see, hear, and feel? I've seen enough and my heart is shattered. Yet my resolve is strong as I stand here with my fellow Minnesotans. How many more innocent children will you allow to be placed in filthy detention centers? How many more fathers and mothers will you allow to be slain in our streets? Where is the accountability? School boards are made up of elected officials, and they're held accountable by their community. Our teachers study their subject matters for years. They're required to attend annual trainings just to maintain their teaching license to do their job. They're held accountable to follow the rules. We do this work because we care deeply about children, their well-being, and their future. In schools, we teach children to follow the rules. And when a child does not follow the rules, they go to the principal's office. We call their parents. We enforce school policies. Simply put, I'm here today asking that the congressional delegation do the same, to hold ICE and CBP accountable for following the rules as written in statute and our Constitution. We are a country of laws, and when people are hired to be in positions of authority, it comes with a higher standard of accountability. The children are watching our actions, and they're watching how we treat each other. We are calling on our Minnesota congressional delegation to lead oversight and accountability on immigration enforcement. This must stop now. Thank you. And with that, it is my honor to introduce Natalie Ehret.
Good morning.
My name is Natalie Ehret, and I'm the founder of Haven Watch. Our volunteers meet individuals as they're being released from detention into the bitter Minnesota cold starting in January till even today. Very quickly, strangers from across our community stepped forward together to meet these individuals at the gate. These people came out traumatized, terrified. Some were so distraught they collapsed into the arms of our waiting volunteers. In those first moments, they wanted what any of us would want, just to get home to the people they loved. But getting through the gate and getting home did not mean their trauma was over. Release did not restore what had been taken from them. It could not give back the birth of a child that was missed while a parent was detained, first steps, birthdays, holidays that passed without them. For students, it could not give back missed semesters of school while the rest of their classmates moved on. Others returned to find their homes gone, jobs gone, vehicles gone. Most of what was taken can never be given back. More than 500 individuals and families have now come through Haven. These are not statistics or immigration cases to us. They are members of our community. They are members of your community. Zena had spoken about the fear children experienced during Operation Metro Surge. Haven often meets these families after that fear becomes a reality, after a parent is taken, after headlines have moved on, and they're somehow expected to return to normal. But for the families we know, there is no normal to return home to. This was not an ordinary disruption. The trauma inflicted on these families was beyond what any civilized society should accept as necessary, proportionate, or humane. Their harm is not abstract. Our volunteers see it every day in the lives of the families and people we come to know and love. One of them is a mother of 4 who's become very dear to my family. Her youngest son battled cancer when he was only 2 months old. He's only 7 months old today. My own son also battled cancer several years ago. And that shared experience has created a different kind of connection between us. Today, her baby is undergoing an extremely serious, life-threatening, and complicated surgery. His father should be there. He should be able to hold his baby and give him a kiss before he's taken into the operating room. And he should be there when his baby wakes up. And he should sit beside his wife while they wait. But he cannot be there because he's been detained since April. So instead, I'm leaving here and immediately going to the hospital to sit with her as a poor substitute for her husband. I will be there because I know from sitting through 5 of my son's own surgeries how difficult it is to wait those hours for news from the doctor. And she's facing that alone. This is one family, and there are thousands more carrying their own versions, their own stories of fear, separation, and pain. Who is sitting with them? People can disagree about immigration policy, but we should not disagree about whether government must have limits. We should not accept racial profiling, arrests without probable cause, the use of lethal force, and the unnecessary cruelty for the price of enforcement. The letter we are delivering today asks Minnesota's congressional delegation to confront what happened here, to prevent it from continuing, and to insist that federal law enforcement operate within the Constitution and remain accountable to the people it serves. What happened in Minnesota did not end in Minnesota. The deaths and escalating force we're all seeing elsewhere makes it clear that this is not over. The need for courage and action is becoming only more urgent. Minnesotans showed extraordinary courage during Operation Metro Surge. Ordinary people documented what was happening. They protected children. They stood beside terrified neighbors, and they refused to look away. That courage is why the people of the Twin Cities received the Profiling Courage Award. But community courage cannot replace congressional action. Our elected officials cannot continue relying on ordinary citizens to stand between neighbors and abusive government power. They cannot rely on volunteers to contain the human damage. They cannot rely on attorneys donating their time to defend rights that the government itself is obligated to defend. And they cannot praise the courage of Minnesotans while failing to demonstrate that same courage themselves. This is their responsibility now. Congress must act, and it must demand accountability. It must protect constitutional human rights of the people it serves, and it must stop leaving communities alone, left to carry the consequences of government actions that were unnecessary, inhumane, and deeply destructive. Courage does not always begin with feeling brave. Sometimes it begins with refusing to look away. Minnesotans refuse to look away. Today, we're asking Congress to do the same. Welcoming our friend Imam Yusuf.
Good morning. My name is Imam Yusuf Abdulle. I'm the Executive Director of Islamic Association of North America, an umbrella of many different faith centers in different states in the United States. And we have 17 centers here in the state of Minnesota. We are here today to call on Congress to fulfill its constitutional duty to stop the violence, stop unchecked overreach, stop inhumane treatment carried out by ICE and the Department of Homeland Security. Across this country, we are witnessing a deeply troubling pattern. Families in Maine, Texas, Florida, and other states have experienced tragic deaths and devastating encounters during ICE operations. Last winter, Minnesota experienced its own wave of fear and oppression during Operation Metro Surge, leaving lasting scars on immigrants and communities. For weeks, businesses were forced to close because customers were too afraid to leave their homes. Workers stayed home, fearing they might never return to their families. Small business lost substantial revenue. Families already living on the edge fell deeper into financial hardship, and the economic consequences continues to ripple throughout our communities. But the emotional damage has been even greater. Children born in this country to Somali and other immigrant families received a painful message. Whether explicitly or implicitly, they do not belong here. Parents lived with constant fear. Children feared every time their mothers or fathers left for work. No child born in America should ever question whether they belong in the only country that they have called home. Today, we ask Congress, we ask this question: who is responsible for holding ICE and the Department of Homeland Security accountable when they exceed their constitutional authority? Who protects the people when the government itself becomes a source of fear? Our system of checks and balances exists for moments like this. No government has the right to violate human dignity or disregard constitutional protections in the name of enforcing the law or exercising government authority. When ICE operations result in unnecessary suffering or the loss of life, there must be a transparency, accountability, and independent oversight. This is not only about laws being broken, it is about our shared humanity being violated. A government entrusted to protect its people must never become the source of fear, trauma, and unnecessary loss of life. Congress must do its job, exercise meaningful oversight, hold DHS and ICE accountable, protect constitutional rights, restore public trust, and ensure that justice, human dignity, and the rule of law apply to every person. History will remember whether we choose silence or courage. Thank you.
All right, before we open it up for questions, we do have a small token from each of us as we pay respect to the memorial that we are in, recognizing the life of Alex Preddy. So we have a few flowers. Okay, and we'll go ahead and open it up for questions if anybody has questions. So the question was why we felt the need to come out and speak on this. I can start, and then I would love if you want to add anything, but I think for us, as I mentioned earlier, it's a responsibility. We had the honor of being together and being able to be there representing Minnesota, but we also have an incredible amount of responsibility to make sure that we continue to choose courage. And being up here is not easy. Continuing to speak up is not easy, but we have to do it. And I think that is part of our shared responsibility. And that's why we are here in front of all of you.
And one of the reasons is that because the killing of innocent is continuous. As long there is an oppression and a continuous violations of ICE and in our land, we have to come out. We have to answer the call. So that's why we're here. We might be coming back again and again. We don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. No one wants to. I personally don't want to come to in front of the cameras and talk about anything unless it is necessary. And when we have to answer, and we have to answer that call, we have to come out. Because today we are here at the memorial of Alex Preddy, and Renee Good's memorial place is not that far away. And we're receiving the same thing in Texas, in Florida, in Maine. So every time there is an atrocity, we have to come out. It is a call that we need to answer.
Thank you. Any other questions? Good question.
I think we're all here because we feel like not enough has been done because it continues to happen. Like Imam said, none of us want to be here and enjoy standing up in front of the cameras. But something has to happen. So we're demanding accountability in lots of forms, but oversight. And so, yeah, not enough has been done, or we wouldn't still be seeing it happening.
I'll just add that what we're hearing from fellow Minnesotans is that there's been little to no transparency or resolution to the killings of Minnesotans, Americans, and other people in our streets. So with the question being, 6 months later, what has been done? That's a great question because we're still waiting for answers as representatives of our state. We need more transparency, more accountability. Thanks.
To that end, there's been so much talk about body camera rollout. I understand there were body cameras for Alex Preddy's death. There weren't for Renee Good. There weren't for the two recent ones in Maine and Texas. Are your organizations hearing anything when it comes to recent ICE activity as to whether we're seeing those devices in Minnesota? Is there any comfort to the idea that they would be rolled out in Minnesota?
I think the question goes beyond the cameras. You know, I think it goes to the point of why should we be incredibly fearful, or why should we be in the hopes of having cameras to demonstrate what is happening when there are no cameras? And I would welcome having a conversation with people about that topic. And again, I think it goes beyond really that initial question to really what are we doing and why are we to that point that we are so in need of that to prove that our community members are facing this.
That on its own, it sounds like wouldn't be enough to satisfy a feeling of accountability.
That is correct, and I welcome any other thoughts, but that is correct. I think within this letter, you know, we're asking Congress not to expand immigration enforcement funding until meaningful constitutional safeguards are in place. And what those safeguards are, that's part of the conversation. Second, we're asking Congress to hold oversight hearings on DHS enforcement practices, including the use of race, language, and appearance as basis for stops and arrests, because we know that people are being stopped because they look like me. People are being stopped because they have an accent. And that's a huge issue. That's going back to the issue of the systems that we're working in. And then third, we're asking Congress to request accountability. And accountability looks and feels in different levels, but that is why we're here.
The basic question to ask is, do you really need guns to enforce immigration? That's the basic question. Do you need guns? Do you need to mask up? Do you need to have thousands and thousands of armed men on the streets of the cities? This is a simple thing. We have been in this country enough to know what immigration enforcement looks like. Somebody comes, is given, notice to the court, you have a case, whether you are accepted or not, that's a different case. So now it's totally different. So we're not talking about only cameras and body cameras and things like that. It's the whole system has to be checked. Everything has to be checked. Congress has to go deeper into this and enact laws that protects people and their lives. So it's not only about cameras that we demanded to be, used.
Why write a letter? Like, what do you think this could realistically do? Or
the question is, why write a letter, and what do we think that this will realistically change or do?
So first and foremost, the four of us are continuing to work together. That night in Boston, we stayed up working together, talking about all of the different work that we do and how our areas of focus can come together for the greater good for people. So writing a letter is one thing that we're doing. We're also continuing to work together on other efforts to help our community members, to help our neighbors.
La pregunta es cuándo esperamos una respuesta y qué respuesta. So when do we expect an answer, and what type of answer are we expecting? We know that as it was mentioned previously, this is one step out of many that we are all working together on. And one of the things that we are doing is asking people to sign on to this letter and sign on and support this effort. We will have communication going out. We will have it on social media. We will be asking at a national scale for people to speak up and choose courage and be with us. So to that extent, really, it's an ongoing effort. And when we expect an answer, I mean, I think we all agree that the sooner the better. We need to be talking about this, and we need to be figuring out solutions. ¿Puedo responder en español? Okay. Entonces, la pregunta alrededor de la respuesta y cuándo queremos tener esa respuesta. Sabemos que este es solamente un paso de los varios que tenemos como grupo trabajando en conjunto, y parte de esto es que sabemos que lo que sigue va a tomar tiempo. algo que estamos haciendo es abriendo la posibilidad de que personas dentro de nuestra comunidad aquí en Minnesota y a nivel nacional puedan firmar su nombre a esta carta para que puedan también demandar todas las cosas que estamos demandando y que podamos mostrar que hay fuerza, que hay comunidad y que hay fuerza. Entonces, eso es algo que estamos esperando, y en cuestión de que pronto, creo que todos estamos de acuerdo que tenemos que hablar de esto lo más pronto posible y tenemos que encontrar soluciones porque nuestras comunidades están sufriendo, estamos perdiendo a personas dentro de nuestras comunidades, nuestras familias, y esto demanda acción y demanda acción muy, muy rápido.
Thank you.
One more question? We can take your question. Yeah.
Thank you so much. What exactly would you want, or you're asking or hoping that Congress would do to increase accountability and bring independent oversight and other things? But what specific steps or reform proposals are you hoping to discuss to solve this issue?
So what are we asking when it comes to accountability? First and foremost, it's really important that Congress and all of the governmental agencies follow their own policies and follow our Constitution that belongs to all of us. So that is first and foremost. Second, it's really important that we understand that we are talking about humans, our fellow humans here. These aren't statistics. These aren't just names that pop up on social media and then are, gone and out of our head tomorrow. We remember each and every one of them, and we care about each and every one of them. So it's also really important to elevate humans. We're in the business of humans, right? So for me, children and families, and for all of us, our communities, your communities. So transparency, follow the Constitution, follow the law that is set forth by our lawmakers. That would be a great start. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here with us. And with that, we will close out the press conference. Thank you.
Derechos laborales. Servicios de salud. Justicia ambiental. Participación cívica. Licencias de conducir y desarrollo del liderazgo comunitario. Estos temas son importantes para nuestra comunidad. Son lo que nos mueve a trabajar cada día para impactar la calidad de vida de las familias latinoamericanas. Queremos un Minnesota inclusivo, multicultural, donde todos tengamos oportunidades. Creemos que nuestra comunidad puede liderar un cambio radical, influenciando las políticas públicas, moldeando una narrativa propia y apoyando el desarrollo de líderes latinoamericanos. Únete para hacer realidad esta visión colectiva para nuestras familias, para nuestra comunidad. Somos COPAL, comunidades organizando el poder y la acción latina.